Good evening and welcome, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to have Ms. Pitts read the emergency evacuation.
In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm may sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles. In the event of severe weather in the area, the chairperson of the committee will determine if there is a need to evacuate to the designated severe weather shelter. If the chairperson recommends evacuation to the designated severe weather shelter area, everyone should go to the second floor by using the interior staircase. The severe weather shelter area is marked by signage. Please do not leave the shelter until the severe weather has left the area. Also, please be mindful of others evacuating as well.
Thank you. We'll be moving to item A, roll call.
John Adams. Here. Rick Carver. Here. Mike Kaler. Here. Jeff French. Judge Gallegos. Here. Judge Harrington. Here. Jeff Hedrick.
Here.
Tonna Monroe. Here. Randy Vineyard. You have 7 present, 2 absent.
Next is item B, setting of agenda. Chair will stand for a motion to set agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor saying aye. Aye. The agenda is set. Item C, approval of minutes for the January 27, 2015 meeting. Chair will stand for a motion to approve the minutes of January 27, 2015.
So moved. Chairman.
That was Mr. France. Did we get a second?
Tonna Monroe.
Okay. She gave a second. Okay.
So all in favor?
All in favor saying aye. Motion passed. Minutes are approved. Item D, public input on items on the agenda. Yes, sir. Please come forward. State your name and the topic you would wish to speak on.
It has been perhaps a while since Mr. French or Mr. Kaler heard the remarks of the UT County Technical Assistance Service Representative Jim Hart, the jail management consultant, speak to you all in June the 24th, 2013. I unfortunately didn't get to witness that, but thanks to the concerns of citizens who have members in the jail, they reviewed his remarks and shared them with me because they felt that their family member in the jail would face retribution if they came here and presented his remarks to you. So, Mr. Hart, at about an hour and 30 minutes into your meeting on that date, if you'd like to go back and research it, was saying, quote, I provided some information based on the Tennessee Department of Corrections monthly snapshot report, and you see that on page 7. The only thing to point out there was that it appears that there's a significant increase in the number of convicted misdemeanants in custody looking at the 2013. Your inmate housing areas were sitting around 148% of capacity. When you see this, you see a facility that is operating in crisis management. We're judging inmates from moving people constantly to try to ensure the safety of staff and to ensure the safety of inmates, and as well as mentioned in your unique classification system sort of goes away, which then we start cracking open the door of potential litigation against the county as we start taking and talking about inmate injuries, assaults, that failure to protect issues due to chronic conditions. There's insufficient showers, commodes, sinks, floor space is taken up, then, if you will, end quote. I think this is relevant because of the criticism that has been made by uninformed people who should be, in fact, actually informed, learned intermediaries, subject to their actions. When they talk about the Blount County Adult Detention Center having been certified for 350 inmates in 2011, its average daily count was 455. In 2012 was 505. In 2013, the average daily count was 507. Of course, that's no surprise to you. The first key recommendation from the action plan that we paid $95,000 to receive from a company who's done 400 plus county assessments, it has done Blount County, they determined that 57% of the pretrial population was being held without bond because they had a probation violation pending. Hence, the courts employ probation violations to deny bonds to persons charged with a new offense while on active probation is how this assessment reads on page 88. According to the inmate profile analysis of the jail's population on November the 20th, 2013, the jail had 524 inmates, of which 150 were randomly selected for analysis. That sample produced 64 as being in Blount County as residents.
Excuse me, Mr. Crotts.
Yes, sir.
We need to keep the comments to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, I'm reading as fast as I can. I've got one paragraph and a half.
Okay, we'll allow you 1 more minute, please.
Thank you. The first, so the Blount County residents equaled 335 members of the 524 in population. The first recommendation on page 87 of the IPPI report is would be to lower the local population in the jail to 100 via police citation of misdemeanors in lieu of custody or speedier process and real classification. Taking the local inmate population down to 100 would release 235 of the 335 locals who are now being held for probation violations without bail or because they are financially unable to meet those obligations. The assessment recommends that these inmates should be allowed to work off their financial obligations to the system on a day fine rate, with the rate being close to what they would make if their regular job was being done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item E, unfinished business. Before we get started, I would like to recognize and thank both Judges Harrington and Gallegos, and Judge Gallegos would like to speak for a second, please.
Thank you. Because, and I may use we and I interchangeably, but the fact of the matter is I'm speaking for myself. The things that I say, I don't have any reason to disbelieve any other judge would disagree with me, but these are my opinions and my own statements. I wanted to say something because this is the first time that appearing on the panel, and I kind of wanted to address an issue or two. Basically, I kind of title it, how we can and cannot help as everybody knows, we're from a third branch, a co-equal branch of government, the judiciary, and we're bound by some rules that other branches are not. So there's some things, obviously, we can and cannot do. I'd like to address, and I also, of course, I'm a citizen, I'm a tax-paying citizen, and as any citizen, you're worried about probably two things. One, public safety, and two, how much does this criminal justice system cost? So these are my opinions. I'm here by invitation. I assume you all asked us to be part of the panel because you wanted opinions and information, basically. I'd like to point out, this is under the, what we can and cannot do. There is the separations of powers doctrine, which governs all three branches of the government. We recognize, as the judiciary, that we don't have any power to tell the county how to spend their money. And that's not the point of anything that I say, or I'm sure Judge Harrington says. That's not the point. Now, I guess theoretically, in some lawsuit, that could come about, but that's not the point of us being on this panel. Now, of course, obviously, the county may find themselves potentially with a federal court telling them how to spend their money, but that's not why we're here. So we recognize that. But there's also something that needs to be recognized. Under the law on the separation of powers, all criminal cases are to be decided on a case-by-case basis, based upon the facts in the law as provided in the United States Constitution, the state constitution, the laws and rules as passed by the General Assembly, and the appellate case law. The law does not provide any direct, and I emphasize direct, influence by the county on the outcome of any criminal case. To allow that to happen would be a violation of the separation of powers, the oath of the judiciary. And so I want to assure everyone that that will not happen in Blount County. We will maintain an independent judiciary. We will decide cases based on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Now, I said direct. Before anyone gets worked up about saying, read too much into direct, the law does allow for the county to have an indirect influence on the outcome of criminal cases, all right? And when I said direct, I mean in terms of there's no authority to say, on these group of cases, this is what needs to be done. On this defendant, this is what needs to be done. There is no provision in the law that allows the county to have that influence over the judiciary. It just does not exist. Indirect influence. How can the county indirectly influence the outcome of cases? As far as I know, the county is obligated by law to fund a jail. They're not, as far as I know, they're not obligated to fund any kind of supervised probation system, any recovery courts, etc., so on and so forth. That's a way they can indirectly influence the outcome of criminal cases. Based on my experience, the main way to reduce increased jail populations over the long run is to reduce recidivism. That's the way you reduce long-term jail populations. Well, how do you do that? When I've already said, well, the county can't directly influence how any case is handled, and that's true. How would you indirectly influence? By giving the courts, and this is a discretionary thing on the part of the county, some additional tools to work with. What are some of these additional tools? Recovery courts. We already have an excellent supervised probation, county-run supervised probation in this county. Again, you're not obligated to pay for it, but why would you not want to do that? In fact, the reality is it does an excellent job, pays for itself, and as far as I know, returns money to the county general fund. But, you know, so those are some good, that's a good alternative. Reentry programs, both in jail and a non-jail program, perhaps something that we could use with our supervised probation. A jail reentry program, the sheriff, I have this on personal knowledge, has desperately wanted to start a reentry jail program that will address some of these issues. However, if he lacks space and he lacks funding, it won't happen. And that's the situation we're in right now. A reentry program and recovery courts actually address many of the issues that contribute to recidivism. Now, when I talk about these other tools, they're not going to be appropriate for all cases. We're never going to put the jail out of business. I know some people would like to hear that we will never put the jail out of business. Why? Because sometimes these programs don't work. Sometimes people aren't eligible or appropriate for them. Maybe they're too dangerous, and these programs won't work. I would make, if I could, I'd make an analogy. I've been around construction my whole life, so it's going to be a construction analogy. For instance, if our job was to build a house, and obviously the more tools you have, the better off you're going to be. Basically, in my analogy in Blount County, we have a finishing hammer, which would be our supervised probation, and we have our jail, which would be a sledgehammer, all right? Recovery courts and reentry programs and other things would fall in between there, would maybe give the builder a framing hammer or a pneumatic nailer, which would be in between, obviously, what a finish hammer and what a sledgehammer can do. You know, those are the tools that would be helpful in dealing with some of these jail issues. They won't solve all of the problem, but they'll help. In the long run, I suggest that it will reduce recidivism, and in the long run, will ultimately reduce your future growth in jail population. And of course, obviously, would save costs. But the greater benefit, I think, to the community and the county would be not that it saves money, that's wonderful, but the greater benefit, I think, would be if you reduce recidivism, you reduce potential victims, and basically we would be reducing the victim that never was, which it's hard to put a dollar figure on that. The bottom line is there is no silver bullet. There is no money option regarding dealing with these issues. And as I stated, we can't make promises as to how any specific case will be dealt with. That would be a violation of the judiciary's oath. All I can say is, if you give us these tools, we'll use them. The fact of the matter is, just going back to my analogy, the house is going to get built, and if the only tool we have is a sledgehammer, then that's the tool we're going to use, because it's going to have to get built. The problem won't go away. In the end, it may not be the product that all of us like or the best product, but that's the reality we're left with. We don't have any power to make you give us tools, but if you give them to us, we'll use them. Thank you.
I think next, let's go ahead and let Judge Harrington speak, or Let me open this. Do you want to go ahead and have a discussion on what Judge Gallegos, just information he has given us, or as a body, listen to Judge Harrington? Okay. Just some of the questions that we had earlier about maybe some statistics and numbers and
As I
change.
had stated at the previous meeting, there was a request for statistics, and I believe that I had said that, oh wait, am I on? That statistics, given the fact that I have a full-time job and a full-time docket, that I could not compile specific statistics necessarily. Those come through the criminal justice system. My case statistics are on the AOC website, et cetera. But one thing that I did specifically look at when we were discussing a women's transitional facility, that was specifically an issue that we had discussed. And I did check with our recovery court program, and we do use a variety of other women's transitional facilities. They are all located outside of the Blount County area. We use the Next Door and the Eagle's Nest in Knoxville. We use Cadis and Family Way in Chattanooga. We also use the Next Door in Nashville occasionally. We also had a placement in Smithville where we had sent a few participants. That did not work out, and we had to bring them home and place them at a facility or a halfway house program in Knoxville. So as it stands right now, most of our female participants, if they need a halfway house placement, are going to Knoxville or Chattanooga. That's, and specifically wanted to report back on that because with that, there are waiting lists to get them into these programs. There are only so many beds. Quite frankly, the women face different issues in that if there are children involved, custody arrangements, pregnancies, et cetera. So right now, we specifically do not have anywhere in Blount County, and we are at the mercy of other jurisdictions and their kindness, basically, as far as working with our recovery court. I'm hoping that that is what you wanted me to report back on. Is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. No.
I'll open the floor to the discussion.
I know you don't have statistics, but approximately how many women a year are we sending out through these programs?
I would have to check through recovery court. I mean, and it is, and through the jail. I mean, they are not just sent through recovery court. They are accessed through probation, sometimes finds placements for them. Our chaplain service is very good at finding placements. So you're talking about collecting statistics from a variety. You have community corrections, state probation, chaplain service. Sometimes family members are able to access these services and work with the attorneys and then the DA's office to work out agreements. So as far as statistics, you're talking about 8 different sources by which these women are placed in different facilities. It all doesn't come through recovery court.
Okay. That's good to know. Since this is a diverse group, meaning all 3 branches of government, I think it would behoove us, I don't know who it needs to be assigned to or if it could even be assigned to one person per se, but I think it would behoove us to find out how many we're sending through each of those avenues, through each of those programs, and get some numbers, and then identify how many more women we have within the jail that would like to go into those types of programs so that we can start seeing whether it's feasible, if that's an avenue that we need to go to, or if we should just focus more on drugs first, recovery court. Should we look at we need to identify priorities, because we can't afford to do everything right away. Obviously, I would love to, but is it possible that you could get like probation to pull the numbers for you, the recovery court?
Here's the situation. You're talking about an overworked system. You're talking about a recovery court staff that right now has anywhere from 80 plus people when they're supposed to have 35. So for me to walk in that office and add one more thing for them to do could actually break it. I mean, we are stretched as thin as we possibly could be. Probation is stretched thin. Community corrections is stretched thin. Court is stretched thin. The sheriff's office, I'm not sure. I would love to be able to find a person to do that. I'm not sure which area I can burden anymore with trying to get that information. I can tell you that there are women in the jail that if we had placements, we could get them out. Can I tell you and go down the list right now and how many? No, but I'm telling you on a day-to-day basis, we are micromanaging and trying to find specific placements for specific individuals. So I'm not trying to put off your question. I guess I'm putting it back on you. Who do you want to get that information?
Well, that's why I said I don't know at this point, but if you could ask each of those avenues that you just mentioned to report numbers to you, and then we would have to, you said it could be the one thing that could break the system, but it's also the one thing that could be used as a catalyst to eventually alleviate some of the problems of the system as well. I mean, it could.
I'll give you an instance. You were at Budget Committee when we presented our proposal for Recovery Court. We have to be on a system for the state in order to continue a state grant that we receive and et cetera to be in compliance. We're not even in compliance with that system because we don't have enough people to enter the information. So you're talking about trying to get statistics when we're already behind trying to enter information. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to figure out where does that come from.
Right, I respect that, but we've got to identify maybe part of that funding. If we give more funding for that, maybe that can be one of the responsibilities.
And that's one of the things that we did ask for, so
I mean,
that we can get
that
some information.
maybe if we do fund a new person or persons for that, then someone needs to be assigned that role and come back to us and report these numbers, and so that we can start looking at where we can get the most for our money and the best for society. I mean, it's a system. And we don't need to point a finger. We're all partially to blame, and we're all part of the solution. And so we need to find someone to take that responsibility. And if maybe that's what we need to do is fund someone, and that be one of their job responsibilities. And not just women, it needs to go into men as well. We were talking about women because we had developed a facility had been developed for men and not for women, but I mean, we've obviously got more men in the jail than we do women. So I think that would, if we do fund something like what your request is, then that responsibility needs to be assigned to someone. I'm not sure who's best for that, but I think that would be a good thing to report back to us so that we can start to identify where do we need the most help? Where should we start first? You know, that's what we need to do at this point, is identify that. So I'm certainly all for more funding. I'm a little hesitant of funding for collections because we heard our clerk tell us that we were already the #1 collections in the state for General Sessions Court. I think we might do well to put some of those people that have outstanding court costs to work. I've talked to Keep Blount Beautiful. She said for the nonviolent people, she's certainly willing to manage seeing them clean up the roads and do things. So I think those are things, you know, maybe we could have a meeting where people come in and say what they're willing to do to help in terms of voluntary, you know, or just adding a little more responsibility on what they do day to day. So I think we, you know, I definitely would like to see that so that we can prioritize. So if we do fund that, I mean, I think that would be a worthy thing, what you're talking about. Expanding a recovery court sounds like a wonderful idea. So I hope that could be one of the goals and one of the responsibilities for someone is to do some of this analysis and report back to us so that we can make better decisions in the future. Thank you.
Any further action on the unfinished business discussion of the possible action regarding women's transitional facility? Are we ready to move on to the next item? Next item, new business, which we've kind of discussed a little bit already, possible action regarding expansion of recovery court.
Can I address that?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want there to be any false understanding of the budget proposal of Recovery Court. The budget proposal was a bare bones proposal that was presented to Budget Committee at County Commission to fund the Recovery Court office for what we currently have as far as participants. Like I said, we have twice as many participants as what we're truly funded for right now. So the budget proposal was to fund it to take care of the participants that we have, a part-time person to try to get data entry back caught up, and then once we are fully staffed, then we can start looking at expansion. But that budget proposal doesn't mean expansion with those people. That is to get us fully funded so that we can appropriately take care of the population that we are serving right now. And then once we are fully funded, then we can start looking at expansion, and expansion becomes a lot easier when you're not double covered already. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And we are looking, there are lots of ways to expand Recovery Court in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of exciting things going on. It's difficult when you've got an overburdened office as it is. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Further discussion?
Yeah. Did that request include anything for Sessions Court, or was that still just going to be for Circuit Court?
The way that it works, our current Recovery Court, because it's ran through Circuit, if there are individuals who would have misdemeanor cases that went through Sessions, they just simply bring them up to our court, and they're all put under the same umbrella of Circuit with supervision, et cetera. But we have misdemeanors in Circuit Court, in Recovery Court. So as far as you could bring in more people potentially, and you could, what we're really looking at is that budget proposal helps us do more assessments, because it includes some more professional individuals on there to do assessments for the jail population. So while that does not mean that there's automatically a Sessions Recovery Court, it does mean those individuals who have misdemeanors only can be brought up and put into the Recovery Court and Circuit. I have individuals who are on diversion in Recovery Court. So I mean, I have people with 15-year sentences and people on diversion. So that's not really an issue.
Okay, but so they would all still be managed under that one umbrella. It wouldn't be, you wouldn't
You're
be
talking
hearing
about-
it in, you wouldn't be hearing the misdemeanor cases in Sessions Court once they're in recovery?
If you expand Recovery Court
Right.
and give them capacity, then yes, we could deal with some of these cases in Sessions Court under the Recovery Court umbrella, as also, as you've heard me talk about a Veterans Court before, that would also be under the umbrella. But they need a certain amount of staff to even be thinking about that, or even get it rolling. And of course, Judge Harrington is far more expert on recovery courts than I am, but the bottom line is, if you're going to get money from the state, whether it's court costs collected here, you have to run your program a certain way in compliance with rules and regulations. Otherwise, they won't give you the money back. So you've got to stay in compliance. And one reason we talk about putting it under the same umbrella is that way we don't end up with repetitive functions in two different offices. Like, for instance, like Veterans Court, just as an example. If we created our own freestanding one, then we would need a whole hierarchy in there. We'd need a director for it, okay? We need all this. Well, we have an excellent, very capable director in Recovery Court, Amy Gallion. We don't need, 3 directors. We just need one, but they need a staff on which they can manage.
As we stated before, a lot of the pieces for Recovery Court are already in place. Probation is already in place, community supervision, certain treatment partners, for lack of a better word, are in place already. But what we really are hurting on are assessment tools, and those individuals who are licensed to be able to administer assessments. then to provide treatment, alcohol, whether it be alcohol and drug treatment, individual therapy, all of those things. So, for instance, if in a perfect world, I had a recovery court and circuit court, and he had that addressed alcohol and drug offenders, and if he had a veterans court that was ran through his docket through sessions, in a perfect world, Amy Gallion is the director of those programs, but he's using county probation to supervise, the way that I use state probation to supervise. That's already in place. That's nothing additional. If there is someone in recovery court that can do assessments, they would do assessments for my offenders just like they would do assessments for his offenders. That way we're not doubling up on resources when it would just be easier to use what's already in place. That's why you keep hearing us talk about trying to expand in different areas. It's really not as difficult once you have a funded recovery court system. And really when we say recovery court, it's a reentry program. I mean, that's really what it is. So it's all the same thing. It's the sheriff's vision, it's our vision, it's everyone's vision. It's a matter of trying to figure out how to do it, and it's going to cost money. I mean, there's no other way around it. But we don't want to see people in jail any more than anyone else does if it is appropriate for them to be served in the community.
Right, and
Okay, you mentioned going through sessions court. Can a felon under a state charge go through recovery court and sessions court? Can it work?
If they're felons, they come through circuit now, and Knox County has a mechanism by which a sessions judge supervises a lot of their felons, and really that's a little premature for us to kind of talk about how we're going to do that. But there is a mechanism by which certain types of offenders can be heard by sessions court, even if they have felony cases.
which in case you're wondering, we would work collaboratively on that, so it's not like there's no competition there or anything
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
I was just wanting to know
So we think
if
that'd be
that
the most efficient
could
method.
happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's possible, yes. There's a mechanism by which that could happen.
okay. When I was talking about the funding a while ago, there was a little bit of I was a little bit upset there about what I said. In terms of the funding and financing for recovery court, if we could identify how much we need to expand recovery court, I mean, we could advocate for the funding. I certainly don't push for wasteful spending and have voted no quite frequently, but if I thought that was something that was good for the community, I would strongly advocate for it and do what I could to get that kind of funding in place. So we do need to see, how many people we can serve and should be serving. And so I can't stress that enough. It may be bare bones is not good enough. And so we need to have some numbers and see what we can do to expand that and make that happen. So I'm certainly not adverse to that. I definitely want to see this problem solved. We have a huge drug problem, we have alcohol problem. We need to address those. We have an overcrowding problem. There are some concerns expressed to me. So I definitely think this is one of the best routes we can go. But before we need to know how much to give you all. We need some numbers to see and go from there. Bare bones, if that's all we can start with, but I'm not just interested in bare bones. I'm interested in solving this problem.
Well, the interesting, I wish there was, do I have to push the button? Okay. I wish that there was a simple answer that we could give you a simple answer. The bottom line is we know there is a pool of people out there that would fit this profile and could use this service, okay, or this, whatever you want to call it, that we could use it. But it's hard to tell you we're going to have 10 people or we're going to have 20 people. And the reason why is it goes back to, like my initial statement, each case is judged on a case-by-case basis. For me to sit here and tell you, Commissioner Monroe, I can promise we'll get 20 people, can't do it. And so that won't happen. But then there's also a complicating factor too. It isn't just up to the judge. People to go into these programs, they have to have the consent or participation of the state's attorney, okay? We can't take a person and say, you're going to be in there. I mean, Judge Harry can talk about it. So there's more complicating factors.
Well, and it's also, and
they
I
may
mean,
not be eligible, okay? So,
and it's also voluntary. Recovery courts are voluntary. So you're also then assuming that they're passing their criminal background check of not having a violent pending offense, which means that if you're on probation for a domestic assault, you can't go to drug court. Or if you have a violent felony conviction in your background, you're not eligible for recovery court. You also have to want it. You have to voluntarily participate in the program. We have been fortunate with the efforts of the current recovery court. That has basically just been for lack of a better word, they have built a reputation with the inmates of a program that people want to get into. That has not always been the case. And so it is you have to find that population that is ready for the change, that is ready for the strenuous nature of the program, and that sometimes is hard to identify. So we're not trying to be difficult, but there's just a lot of factors involved.
And I'm not downplaying that at all, but the trend is growing upward, so we could identify at least a baseline and know that it's going to be at least this many and probably more. Growing upward unless we address that number and start making some preparations for a minimum number. So let me ask you then, the drug portion of recovery court has a 60-day sentence. Would that be the case with misdemeanors? Would they also have to do 60 days? And because it's not so much that I'm opposed to the 60 days as there was a comment made at the budget hearing that because we have a jail component to our recovery court program, that we aren't eligible for some of the money that's out there that could be used to help fund that. So is there a consideration for misdemeanors that would not have a 60-day jail program associated
we
with
could
it?
let Judge Harrington talk about the 60 days and so on and so forth, and then I don't mind responding to anything having to do with session, but she's been involved in this for a long time.
I remembered that time. I'm on, right? Okay. Here's the issue. When drug court first came about, and let's not lose sight of the fact that I keep calling it drug court, it's recovery court, came to Blount County because your district attorney, the sheriff, Judge Thomas, and Matt Garner, the public defender, all agreed that they were tired of the recidivism and were interested in something different and trying to change that revolving door. When drug court first came to Blount County, we had federal funding. It was an out-of-jail program. Because when in its infancy and when the federal grants were plentiful, then they paid for, we contracted with Blount Memorial, we contracted with several different agencies, and we provided, it was an out-of-jail program. We expanded actually, and at one point we had 2 different tracks of drug court running in the early 2000 period, into mid-2000, of an in-jail phase and an out-of-jail phase. And more often than not, what we ran into is our out-of-jail phase, if they were unsuccessful, then we put them in the jail phase. When funding goes away, and we tried to, you're basically begging other individuals to help you out. The sheriff agreed to let us use the jail as our inpatient treatment facility, basically, and Community Corrections and ETHRA agreed to provide treatment for us. Didn't cost us anything. So they came in and provided the treatment, and that's really how the jail phase of the current recovery court was born, was out of basically what we're always dealing with, no money in a budget crisis. I mean, that's where we were. What we found, and you've heard me say it many times, and our participants, I could line them up out the door, will tell you that 60 days is the difference between success and not success. And it's that 60 days of not having to, not being around individuals who are using, having a place to live, being able to concentrate on their recovery and us getting them stabilized before they go out. In a perfect world, I like to talk about what we would have is we would be back to an out-of-jail track where we provide intensive outpatient treatment, an in-jail track for those offenders that are not eligible for an out-of-jail track. For instance, a sessions court could run an out-of-jail phase or track of drug court, leave the in-jail phase for those that can't do it out, and then we would have some subparts of veterans court and a track for those individuals who are pregnant and addicted and are in the criminal justice system. So that's our grand plan, and what we actively look for is that's what it would look like to us, is a reentry program through sessions, through circuit, for veterans, and for the pregnant mothers. That's if you ask me what we want, that's what we would love to see, and I think that we would be able to reduce part of the population, and we could see some success with that. But once again, it still costs money, and that's what we're kind of left with.
Did that answer your question as far as a sessions track would be more out there?
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I was gonna say, because I told you that. Basically, Judge Harrington answered the question, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if you want to ask me something specific. But the bottom line is, yes, there are variations, and yes, the variation may include an out-of-jail track.
would,
Yeah, I'd like to, first of all, in the spirit of full disclosure, I am a member of the Drug Court Foundation Board, so I'm very familiar with the drug court. I am also the past president of the board, and I hear what you're saying, Ms. Monroe, about we need numbers and we need to know where we need to expand it, but I would like to make a motion that this board support the current recommendation by drug court, because they know where they need what they need now. If we don't do something now, the clock's ticking, and we're going to get past the budget process, and we're not going to be able to get all these numbers in. They know what they need now. Obviously, we know we can expand, but I would like to go ahead and make a motion that we, as a committee, support their recommendation to the budget committee as they've requested to get them the staff that they need to support what they're doing right now. I think it's around 80. We're staffed for 35. And then that would give us, or the drug court, the ability, or the recovery court, I'm sorry, I'm trying to break that bad habit, but the ability to see where we could grow that program after they get what they need now. So I would like to make that as a form of a motion that we support their current budget proposal.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, that was piss. You want to reread that?
Okay, the motion is to support the current budget proposal recommendation for recovery court to, as a committee, to the budget committee.
Discussion.
I don't think I've talked to anybody that would disagree with that. But I think what we're trying to do today is discuss, I mean, we just heard the judge get very stressed out and say that it was bare bones. So I'm trying to actually talk beyond that maybe that's all we're going to be able to do this budget year, but we're here to discuss beyond that. So I'm certainly not, I don't think anybody is opposed to what she was requesting, or any of them were requesting, but we're trying to discuss a much deeper problem than that. This request is not going to fix our problems, not even close. So, I mean, if we agree to this, we're just agreeing to get by as best we can. But we really do need to look deeper and talk deeper about this. And so I think maybe the part of that request should be, if we do the funding, that one of the head officials with the program report some numbers back to us and tell us what our goals should be and what we could achieve if we expanded and did that. So we can actually talk about expanding that. So I'm all for that, but I think that it needs to be with the goal that we will get some numbers out of that.
So you'd like to make that an
Yeah.
amendment to the motion?
Yes, yes.
I'll accept it as part of them.
Okay.
And just, Mr. Chairman, my thought is on this is I understand we want to go deeper, and believe me, I I want us to go deeper because we're dealing with a large population in the jail. But I think we've got to start somewhere. And I'm not saying that if we make this motion and this happens, then we're going to quit. I think we've got to take the first step, and that's my opinion. I'm not saying we quit after this. I'm saying we need to make that first step as a committee, because I've seen firsthand, and I would invite each of you as a committee member to come to Recovery Court and see what they do.
I too am on the, and have just gotten on Recovery Court on the board, and to see the fact of where it began and what it's staffed for and the amount of participants in there is just phenomenal. To hear these people talk about what they've experienced and talk about their life and how they've changed it has been really remarkable. And but it has grown more than what they were set up to do. So meeting the need of where we are now and still looking towards the future, hopefully with the House or the representatives and the Senate voting for the Veterans Court, this will be the next step in going in there. And with hopefully the governor will sign it. I think he will. And then we'll see that come into play. It's a growth process. And it is growing, and there is a major need. I see the churches involved and people going in there and having a jail mission. I don't know how you would describe it, but they do have a jail church that goes in, I believe is how you could call it, and that deal with women for different issues that are in there and for men. So I get to talk to some of the pastors that go in and talk to the prisoners. So there are different avenues that are being addressed, and how we're going to get them and get someone to open up and realize that they have to take responsibility for where they are in life. And this is just giving them an opportunity to get past that and get there. So I'd like to just leave that. That motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Here's my concern, and I'm just going to put this out there. Your current Recovery Court department of the county has done amazing things with the money that they have now. So I'm talking about getting them funded for what we have now, but it is really, I can't imagine them resting on, oh, now we're fully funded. They have not stopped. They are not going to stop. If you talk to any of them, they are very passionate people about what they do. So I think funding them to meet their current needs, in a way, Director Gallion won't tell you that, but she can't help herself but to expand. I mean, that's just the nature of the issue. That's the nature of the assessments that come in. The fact that no one's been able to say no is why we have 80 participants. So those are all issues, and I think that funding them is a step forward. It is a place to start. And we're talking about several different issues. Understand that there is still going to be that violent offender that is not eligible for these reentry programs, that's not eligible for Recovery Court. So you're talking about two different populations, really. You've got the violent and the nonviolent individuals. So in my mind, I can't imagine Director Gallion stopping once she's funded and saying, okay, we're good now. It will be expansion. They won't be able to help themselves.
Can you two, one of you two or both of you, elaborate on what you mean by violent? Because there's violence against the person, and I guess violence against property. When you say violent, is somebody that breaks in and steals something and doesn't harm anyone physically, is that considered nonviolent or is that considered violent? What are you defining as violent?
For the drug court, for Recovery Court, the way that works is there are several offenses, and it's violence against a person. So if someone breaks into your home and steals something and no one's home and no one gets hurt, even though that's called aggravated burglary, that is a nonviolent offense as far as a Recovery Court. However, if someone walks in, or say that there's someone home when the burglary is committed and there's a scuffle and someone gets hurt, that is a violent offense, and so you don't qualify for recovery court. You can't commit an armed robbery and be in recovery court. You can't have a pending misdemeanor case, meaning you can't be on probation for a domestic assault. And so those are all disqualifying offenses, but it is against a person. Yes. Or you could have, and keep in mind, several individuals have violent felony convictions in their past that disqualifies them. So there's an issue there as well.
But that's based on what the state law is, though.
Correct.
That's not based on the judge's opinion or the DA's
That's
opinion.
the law.
That's what the state law is, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that has been amended. Is everyone clear?
I got one more question. Okay, with what you're asking to fund this year, is it just going to be the drug component, or are you going to try to start with some pregnant women and beyond and veterans, or are you just strictly sticking with drugs at this point?
No, we are actively working on expanding, and that's the thing, whether you fund us or not. I mean, let's be honest, we are always going to be looking for a solution to the problem, whether you give us any money or not. I mean, we are constantly partnering with people in the community. I see several familiar faces here tonight of people that we have partnered with. We are going to be looking for solutions, whether you give us a dime. And so it is a matter of trying to find those other resources. So yes, we have meetings set up with the state about expanding veterans court. I have a meeting set up with an individual from Cornerstone to try to work on pregnant women. I mean, those are all things that we are actively doing that are just separate and apart from this process. That's part of what we do, is constantly looking for solutions. And we've been doing that years before there was a jail overcrowding problem. I mean, these are things that are part of what we do as our job. So yes, that would include us. I mean, we've already started the process for expanding, and you've not given us anything. So that's just the fact of it.
Right, and of course, you've heard me advocate for veterans court, so I'll do that again. But, that's obviously is a place to start. And one, because I think that's a good population we need to try and serve. We need to try and serve all populations, but I think that's a good one to start with. But there's the added benefit too, if this new bill becomes law, which I would think that it would, in light of the fact that it passed the Senate 31-0 and the House of Representatives 88-3, I would think that it would become law. And in the event it does, what's going to happen is, I think it would probably take effect July 1, the county is going to have to collect this extra money, all right? An extra money that can be used in a veterans treatment court or a veterans treatment track. If you don't have one, you still got to collect the money, and it's going to be sent to Nashville, and then they are going to distribute it out the state where they want it to go. However, if you have a veterans treatment court, then they'll send the money back to you. But there's a trick to it. You can't just say, I got one and we're running it under our terms. It has to be a state certified veterans treatment court, which wouldn't be a problem for us because we already have a state, certified recovery court. It's just an absolute, and I don't want to, when I use words like impossible, I'm not being overstating. It's just absolutely impossible for our current recovery court to take on that added role. I mean, I don't, they just can't. They don't have the capability, they don't have the staff, they don't have the budget. And frankly, I just don't think the state would approve it anyway. Right. Because you have to meet these requirements. So, but I would think that would be a great place to start. And we may get some money out of it.
And a logical place to start.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item of business is number 2, discussion and possible action regarding setting date, time, and place for workshop with Tennessee Corrections Institute and CTAS. And before we get into that, I would like to recognize Mr. Jim Hart and ask him if he would like to say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Hart. I'm the jail management consultant with the County Technical Assistance Service. Just to sort of let you know what we've already started working with the Sheriff's Office, Bob Bass with TCI and myself. One of the things that we actually kicked off today was to start a detailed staffing and operational assessment of the jail to look at current staffing, looking at the various challenges. Some of the discussion about in-jail going into the community it's across Tennessee, it's across the country about reentry. And having spent 32 years as a jail administrator and working in different facilities, it is a critical component of in-jail type of programming with linkage to the community and supervision. I ran a boot camp program for minor offenders in the Marine Corps years ago. And it was a very successful program, but it was successful because once they were released from that program, they went back to their units, to their organizations where they were under the direct supervision of their organization. There was a trend in the 80s of the boot camp programs across the country run by Department of Corrections that didn't last too long. Biggest problem was that once they completed those short terms of stay in those boot camp programs to address substance abuse issues and anger issues, they were put back out into the probation system, which supervision was very intermittent because of the extreme workload that was going on out there. So I like the discussions, and I commend you for what you're trying to accomplish here. It's awesome. But we are working on the staffing analysis. And so I think that some of the discussions might be, as we start looking at this staffing analysis, is what are some of the things that we can do as part of this discussion to support that, as far as screening in-house jail inmates in jail for various programs and options or opportunities that could go before the courts for consideration. Might be something to look at there that I jotted down as a note. We also talked about in a meeting that Bob Bass and I had with the sheriff a couple weeks ago about taking a look at the inmate classification system in the jail and just sort of doing an evaluation of that to look at, when I think of inmate classification, I think about evaluating risk and need of each individual offender. So we're going to take a look at that as well. Bob Bass offered to do a training program, and I think he calls the title of it is called Jail. And basically it's just sort of an awareness training of what goes on inside a jail. What are the requirements? What are the different types of pieces of the puzzle, whether it be classification, whether it be supervision of inmates, housing operations, booking intake type of operations, the diverse group of people that we house inside the facility. A lot of discussion about substance abuse, and certainly jails are filled with people who have those issues. But there was no discussion about the average of about 16% of every jail population and prison population having serious mental illnesses, having been diagnosed with serious mental illnesses that jails, that communities deal with, but seem to sort of be pushed back into the jail population because of the restrictions and the limitations and closures of mental health facilities across not only Tennessee but across the country. Bob indicated that his class takes about an hour, and he indicates that discussion, questions and discussion after that class can range from 30 to 45 minutes. Him and I compared calendars just before this meeting occurred, and the next available date that him and I can be in the same part of the state together is the week of June 22nd. He prefers at least Tuesday because he's traveling from West Tennessee here. Tuesday through, actually I think he preferred Tuesday through Thursday if possible. And if that's not a workable week, then he said that we can discuss further there.
June 22nd. Everybody look at their calendars and see if we can
Well, I mean, all I can say on the 22nd is I'm usually in court until 4:35 on Monday.
He said the week of, anytime during the week of June 22nd.
What about the 24th?
It's Wednesday, the 24th. How's that?
We do afternoons, so we can do morning court.
We're both of us are open that entire week. It's the desire of this committee.
What happens when you put judges on a committee?
I could be there by afternoon. I think I could conclude everything on Wednesday.
So we're thinking 1, 2 o'clock? Okay. Mr. Kaler, is that? Okay, good. Let's say 1. Is that Commissioner Kaler, 1 o'clock?
It would be difficult for me, but maybe not that.
Could maybe try.
I'll try to work.
See.
We'll see if I can get
Mis-
it. 1 o'clock till 3.
He said typically an hour for the class and 45 minutes discussion afterwards. So, yeah, 1 to 3, probably be a good block of time. Mr. Adams, that's
That's fine.
good. Mr. French? Okay. Let's-
I'd like to extend an invitation back. On Wednesdays, we have our recovery court docket. If either of you would like to attend, I'll invite you to attend that docket that morning.
Sure, what time, ma'am?
Starts, if you want, you can come to staff and it starts at 8
Room
a.m.
4:30.
Are
In,
you willing to sign a confidentiality?
yes, ma'am. Do you know Judge Stern in Chattanooga?
I do.
Rebecca Stern?
We were prosecutors together in the Hamilton County Police Office.
When I was the chief of corrections in Chattanooga, I was part of the initial process of her establishing the drug court there.
There you go. Yep, that's, I hate it, she retired.
Yes, ma'am. 08 in this building, 8 o'clock in, okay.
Okay, we're going to set June 24th, Wednesday, June 24th, 1 to 3 in this room, room 430. Or thereabouts, 1 to 3. I mean, if it's obviously runs over.
I will communicate that with Bob Bass. And,
Okay.
we'll be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. I think now that we've set this meeting, we'll work towards another meeting, but I think now that we've got this one set with everybody that needs to be there, I think this is the one we need to concentrate on having and fulfilling. Next item is G, public input on items not on the agenda.
Wait a minute, before we go there.
Ms. Monroe.
Are we going to have the opportunity after that next meeting to set the agenda? Because if not, for our follow-up meeting, we wouldn't have an agenda. I know this is not popular, but I would at least like to have a discussion about keeping federal prisoners on the agenda. Let's just talk about it. So I would like that to be the topic, one of the topics for our next meeting after we meet with Bob Bass.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make that one of the topics. Public input on items not on the agenda. Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name and what you would like to speak about.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just read the last sentence of that portion of the recommendation. I was referring to the study that was done on the jail assessment, and their conclusion for this first recommendation, which was based on the fact, as you may recall, they only surveyed 150 members of the jail population of the 525 to come up with their percentage of 57% of the 150 were Blount County residents. And if the county were to act on the recommendation to put a limit of 100 Blount County citizens as members of the jail population, then the recommendation was to lower the population of the county citizens by 225 from the 350 that were presently in jail, according to that one-day snapshot in November of 2013. And his recommendation to how that would be done would be a similar, method that we're trying to deal with here this evening, and that is helping the nonviolent offenders find a way out of their incarcerated cost by giving them a day fine rate to do public service activities. And the recommendation conclusion said the study concludes that the cost of mounting such a program is something that would reduce both the cost of the jail and probation caseloads and thus postpone the need for jail construction. I think would also relieve the concerns that the judges have expressed with regards to getting people released with drug problems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make sure y'all invite all the commissioners. Knowledge is a valuable tool, and with knowledge, I think we can make change. Without knowledge, we're not going to accomplish anything and act silly and not hit the direct target we're hitting at and that we're all in this together for. So I'd like to make sure you invite all the commission members.
Next. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sue Wyatt, and I'm here this evening representing the Blount County Ecumenical Action Council. Our members represent a number of faith communities and nonprofits throughout Blount County. And on behalf of the council, want to express to you our appreciation for the difficult work that you are doing, and also express our desire to learn if there are ways in which our faith communities, nonprofits, and volunteers can be a part of the solution of overcrowding, and particularly if there are ways in which we could support efforts like the Recovery Court and other initiatives to reduce recidivism in our community. So I'm asking for your wisdom and guidance if there's a way to open up communication with this committee, or if there is some other committee or department that it would be good for us to be in communication with. We would like to know that and just open that door for working in partnership.
Yes, sir.
I am Billy Newton, and I'm former chair of Blount Ecumenical Action Council, as is Sue. So I will echo her remarks that there is great interest in the faith community here in how to support reentry program, recovery programs that would help. I'll speak on behalf of one particular church that is almost directly across the street from the Justice Center. And when we talk about lack of space for programs in the jail, it occurs to us, is it possible to have, to use space that's directly across the street from the jail for programs for educational activities as well? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Kathy Allen, and I'm just a citizen of Blount County. That I don't really understand why our money was paid for the study on our jail when, you know, only one of the persons on the committee, on the Blount County Correction Partnership Committee, only one of them wanted to hear about the jail assessment report. And there's so many that haven't even read the report. And it's really bothered me, and I've done a little bit of research and on it. I want to read a letter from the Office of the County Mayor of Knoxville to Dr. Kalamoff in 2007, July 11, 2007, recommending, this is, Dear Mr. Kalamoff, having reviewed your initial jail crowding assessment prepared for key criminal justice officials in Knox County, Tennessee, I just wanted to compliment you and your staff on your thorough and fair report. Although the jury is still out as to how we proceed with the invaluable information, I believe your report is right on the money. I also appreciated the sensitivity you and your staff displayed when dealing with many of our key officials. I realize it is not always easy to conduct interviews and extract information from people. When you question the way certain things are done, I can honestly say that in our case, all were very impressed by your approach and your knowledge of issues being discussed. Although I'm sure we will have much discussion and debate over your recommendations, I am confident that many changes in the way we do business will take place. From our experience with ILPP, I will not hesitate to recommend your services to others. Sincerely, Richard T. Moran, Senior Director of Information Technology. I mean, if Knox County had no problem with them, why has Blount County got a problem with them? And I also would like to read one other thing about overpopulation, and this was in 1978. Judge Charles R. Scott quoted, a free democratic society cannot cage inmates like animals or stack them like cattle in a warehouse and expect them to emerge as decent, law-abiding, contributing members of our community. And in the end, society is the loser. With these words and the stroke of a pen, in 1976, Judge Scott...
Thank you, Miss Allen. Thank you, Miss Allen. It's 3 minutes. Thank you, ma'am. Any others wish to speak?
Can I be recognized? Is there anyone else from the audience?
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure that something is not misinterpreted. And since there's been comment on the jail report, and particularly the comment of one of the audience members, I think it was Mr. Grothjohn, about that the report was similar to comments that both myself and Judge Harrington made. None of my comments were based upon anything, if any similarity, based upon anything that was revealed or stated in the jail report done by Dr. Kalmanoff. My comments are based upon over 20 years as a criminal defense attorney, a criminal prosecutor, and as a judge, common sense.
I'm sorry, but from the county attorney, we're not allowed to be discussing any of the documents, Mr. Kalmanoff.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
us a chance to explain why we don't have a county attorney. Mr. Chairman, we don't have a county attorney. We have a mayor's attorney. The county commission, as you pointed out, is a separate body, legislative body, another branch of government. That branch of government creates the position of a county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Grotjean.
Yes, sir. That hasn't been done.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor saying aye. Motion passed. Meeting is adjourned.